Hey, welcome back to the Blue Collar Off-Road Podcast, episode 18. I'm Graham. I'm here with Richie, Cody, and Luke. And I think it's going to be a quick one today, but based on a couple things we've seen floating around on Facebook and just trying to cover some more ground that we haven't touched on too much while we're running low on content here with the lack of wheeling and mid projects, nothing fun happening really between all of us. I think we're gonna hit, suspension characteristics. What are desirable squat, dive, anti-squat, anti-dive characteristics in a 3-link and a 4-link in your front and rear suspension. Luke, I know you're doing the 4-link. You're right in the middle of all of it. It's right up your alley. I've done the 3-link stuff before. I don't think it's nearly as intimidating as everybody makes it seem to be.
It is sincerely not.
And then other stuff like bump steer, why does your track bar need to be the same length as your drag link so you can drive well? And why should you not do a track bar or not put a 4-link front suspension in a track bar, I'm getting all confused already.
A double triangulated 4-link with a drag link?
With a drag link, yes. Why is that bad? What are the potential problems there?
All the things.
I know that one.
It's been a fun one to watch unfold on Facebook. If you know, you know. And then the other bit we'll cover a little later, and I think we'll tie in pretty nicely, is when we're looking at suspension components that are bolt-on, and actually not even suspension components, any bolt-on product that you're looking for, a bracket, stiffeners, I guess not bolt-on, but they're pre-bent. Just components you're buying. A lot of people I see on Facebook, it's like they have no critical thinking skills. They can't look at a product and look at somebody else's that's similar and figure out which one's better. They have to ask. Right?
Yeah, that isn't an annoying thing with the dawn of the internet. I guess that ties into our last episode's discussion about social media, but it is extremely annoying, the lack of critical thinking skills that are out there. To bring it back to the suspension numbers, so you had mentioned at the beginning of this, like the anti-dive and anti-squat. Those are the same thing, just in different directions. If I remember correctly, anti-dive would be for the front, and that is the determination of the anti-squat, but when you apply braking forces to it. Something that in the rear, I'm not super positive about the effects of on the road, but I know that the power is more of an important thing. So in the rear, when you're talking about an anti-squat setup, or an anti-squat number, that's like the hypothetical number for when you hit the gas, what is it going to do? And 100 is considered a neutral point, meaning that the suspension is not going to have its geometry affected by the input of torque, if I remember correctly, as far as raising and lowering the body in proportion to where the axle is. Anti-dive would be, if I remember correctly, when you hit the brakes, the propensity for it to want to push the nose down.
Yeah, it pushes the nose down, or if you have no anti-dive, it just doesn't move at all. And a little bit is actually good, because when your vehicle doesn't do any sort of, not a ton, you can't have a ton, because then it actually messes with your brakes. I've had that happen on a stock Cherokee, actually. I think it was bad shocks, but when it really dives, it's bad. It makes you lose a lot of braking power. But when it sits there like a brick, it's also not really good. You want to have a little bit. At least personally, I've found that a little bit of anti-dive or a little bit of dive is okay. You don't want a ton, but
So I have a lot of anti-dive up front, if I remember correctly. I think I'm somewhere in the realm of 115, 120. I don't know.
I'm jealous of people. I'm jealous of everybody throwing around their charts. I don't know where my chart for my 3-link went. That was one of those things I built it, and then I put it in afterwards and was like, okay, I'm okay with those numbers.
I gotta check it again for my front, but I'm just going off of memory. The rear I can tell you all about because I could like pull it up right now. But
Yep.
the with my front setup, with the amount of anti-dive that it has, it's not horrible. Like when I hit the brakes, it stays pretty damn solid and it doesn't really pull the nose down that much, but it doesn't unload when I get the nose up either, which to me was a okay cost benefit trade because with the Super Duty
Yep.
axles, the brakes are big enough that it's a light Cherokee, and I'm saying light in terms of what those brakes are meant for. Um, Not to prattle on too much, but with the 100 being perfect energy transfer into the rear axle, so like it's not trying to dig too, or it's not trying to push the axle down or pull it up under load. And that is like the mark that everyone kind of shoots for. I landed at 100 on the center hole. I think it was 77 on the top hole and like 115 on the bottom hole. I don't know how there was that big of a jump when I went to the top hole. I might have that number wrong, but I know that it
Yeah,
was
That
pretty
sounds like it's a lot because it depends on where you're adjusting it. Are you adjusting it from the body side?
body side.
Yeah, that's why. See, I can only adjust from my axle side, and I only
Oh,
get a couple
okay.
up and down for each. But I know on the body side, if you raise it, you get some drastically.
Oh, I'm
So
sorry. It
what-
was 87. I just looked at it. Yes,
So
Richie?
what would be a better number to look to like have, the 87 or the 115? Like what side of that spectrum do you want to actually
What do the
be
numbers
at?
even mean?
So what the numbers are is the
This let me cut you off. This is actually good because I've messed with the numbers. I've built my own suspension or my own link suspension for the front. You've done them, Luke. Richie has never done a his own link suspension, and neither has Cody. So I think this is actually kind of cool because if you guys have, questions, where are you losing us, right? Because
Yeah.
I feel like it's once you know how to do it, it's easy. But for somebody who's listening, who's trying to build a suspension and doesn't understand half the stuff that Luke's talking about for the most part here, then if you have any questions, if you don't understand it, chime in and let's see if we can go somewhere with that.
Well, the big thing for me is just like I understand all the numbers are coming off of the calculator offline, and I understand how to. Excuse me. I understand how to put all of those numbers that are required into the link calculator. I don't understand what the numbers I'm looking at.
So anti-squat is the mathematical equation for what your suspension is going to do in relationship to the center of gravity of your vehicle. On your average vehicle, it's going to be like your top crankcase bolt, not crankcase, transmission bolt, if I remember correctly. So what that number does is it's like forming a lever, if you will. And when you put power into that lever, where it is going to, or how it's going to react. So when you push down on that lever, or you put power into it and it pushes downwards, that's going to be the product in the rear of a higher anti-squat number. And so when you have a higher anti-squat number, your suspension tries to push the axle into the obstacle or into the dirt. When you have a lower number, it tries to pick up the axle almost. If that makes sense.
So that's like the difference. That's the difference between the ass end of your vehicle lifting up or going down when you punch the throttle.
Yes. Now, roll steer.
Okay.
Roll steer and roll center determine the stability. Roll steer I can talk more about because I know more about it than I do with roll center. I believe the roll center is supposed to be in relationship to the center of gravity on the vehicle. And you want to get that pretty close to where your center line is. Like, so for example, I think my engine bolt, the top bolt's at like 38 inches, and my roll center is like 30 inches right now. So I know that the rear end's going to be kind of like a little bit loose feeling. If I have my memory correct, I might be wrong on that, and someone that knows more is more than able to correct me. What roll steer, or I think it's called roll angle in the calculator, is the amount of side to side movement. So like almost picture in your mind your suspension causing rear steer. So with my current setup, even though it's a double triangulated, due to where my link spacing is, to improve the stability by having a wider roll, or to get the roll center better, if I remember correctly, that's what I was talking with Tim about. But wow, I just totally derailed that train of thought trying to remember what I was talking to Tim about. Holy fuck. I'm sorry about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna cut you off because that was going into down the rabbit hole.
Yes. I am terribly sorry about that. We went so far down the rabbit hole that I was trying to remember shit from like 4 weeks ago when I was first building that suspension.
Are the numbers for the anti-dive front going to follow a similar fashion as the rear? As
Yes.
a bigger number means the front end goes down more when you hit the brakes?
If I remember correctly, yes. And so with a front, where the anti-squat numbers really become noticeable are, it'll start hopping if you have a low anti-squat number. If you have a high anti-squat or a high anti-dive, I should say, it's less likely to start hopping because your suspension is not driving that front axle into the ground as hard.
Okay.
Yep.
Does that sound correct to you, Graham?
It does, and that's why I have more of a wheel hop when I'm going up stuff than you do, because
Yes.
I know I've got more of an anti or more dive than you do. Like, I hate
No,
calling
you'd have anti-dive because your front would be pulling up, so it would not be diving, because diving would be it would be using suspension geometry to push your wheels down. Never mind. That's fine.
Yes. No, actually, Cody is on the correct train of thought here. If you have more dive in the front end, if you will, or like more of on the diving side of the front end, your front end is trying to push that front axle down. So that's why you hop more.
Gotcha.
So what do the numbers actually mean? Like, I get it, you go into the calculator, you type in your measurements, you type in this, you type in that, but then a number pops out. Is that a percentage? Is that a fraction of something? Is that a degree?
So how I think of the numbers, and before Luke goes on to another tangent into some crazy rabbit hole, which is fine, but how I view the numbers is, if you're within a threshold, I view them as a tolerance, and everybody has different opinions on what that tolerance should be. But I'd say sticking around 100, maybe to the 80s and maybe 70s. I forget what my suspension is in the front, so I'm not going to say 70 or 80 because it's somewhere in that range, I think. As long as you're not way out of proportion, then you're fine. But when you're working on, especially on Cherokees, but I'm sure on other vehicles too, there's certain constraints that you can't work around, especially if you're just trying to slap them together.
You are 100% correct on that. I gave up a lot to get my suspension where it is. I had to cut through the floor in multiple spots. Like, the back of my Jeep looks like the trenches of World War One.
There's nothing. I've seen pictures.
I can fit through the sides.
So what you can do is you can just put the links where you want them to be, for the most part, with minimal sacrifices made, and still have a suspension that's going to perform great. It's just not going to be dead nuts on according to the link calculator. But half the people don't even know how to plug in their information into the Excel sheet anyways, because it's so goddamn complicated for somebody who doesn't know what it is or how to use it. or where to measure from, or what if your driveway's
Well,
crooked? Right? You're not going to get.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like it takes some people months to figure out how to put stuff into the link calculator.
I put it off because I don't really enjoy sitting under my Jeep and measuring and figuring out where I'm supposed to measure from, and it asks you for weird shit. It really
It's
wasn't
literally
fun as ever.
it's just off of the ground and distance from center line. It's not hard. You can do it in 10 fucking minutes with a flat surface. Richie, I know that was a dig at Coxslayer off-road. And you just couldn't leave it alone. Oh god, that's caught me
Yeah.
2 Facebook bans.
Yeah, careful, call
Well,
people
listen to
time
your
guns.
bike.
But I'll wrap it there.
Yeah.
I think
You
the
didn't
link-
answer my question. Just saying.
What do you mean I didn't answer it? I
You
said
said
it's
that
not.
the numbers are a threshold, but what the fuck do the numbers mean? You
It's
said,
just how much you anti-squat or anti-dive.
but what do the numbers represent? Is what I'm saying.
They
Is it just a
represent the
scale?
mess.
Is it
No.
a scale that it's from like 100 to 0 and
I don't
anti-dive is 0 and max anti-squat is 100
So-
and then you're basically-
100 is nothing, and less is more, and more is less.
So, all right, basically, not to go into the diatribe again, but if you had 0% anti-squat, all of the vehicle's energy would go into pushing the rear axle away from the vehicle. If you had 200% squat, all of that is going to go into torquing the vehicle up. More of a push down, better grip into rock. Less push down, less better grip in rock, better suspension performance when you get the nose up or when you go to sucker punch it.
So okay, that's all I needed. I just needed what the numbers represent. The numbers are on a scale of anti-squat to anti-dive, or which is the same thing. So dive to anti-dive, and that's what
Yeah.
the numbers represent. Got it.
Yeah.
Understand.
Yep, 100% is perfectly neutral. That means that for any amount of energy that gets transferred into that rear axle, it should not push that suspension up or down. It should stay where it was under the vehicle, under the suspension's movement. So, like, if the Jeep is flexed out and you go to put your foot down with it at, 100% anti-squat, it's going to ride the neutral line between excessive downward force and the weird performance you get when the ass end dips while you are trying to climb something. Okay, that is all.
So I think we beat the shit out of anti-squat and anti-dive.
Absolutely.
Well, I
Any other-
will say, through all that jumble, I did learn a couple things.
So
Cool.
let's go and talk about the front end and how the panhard bar plays into that, because it is essentially your fourth link. And for anyone that doesn't know what a panhard bar is, that would be
Track
your
bar.
track bar.
Not a panhard bar.
But
Fuck is this?
I literally did not know what a panhard bar was.
Why can't it be a pan soft bar?
I don't know. I just
Well, it
quote
can
the
be.
technical term.
Because pan was hard, that's why.
Yes,
Um.
generally like a cast iron skillet, if you will.
Mm.
So the angle at which your track bar sits will determine some of your link performance. I found out as an interesting aside. A flatter bar will be less likely to transfer side-to-side energy into your suspension, and also helps to keep the anti-squat numbers closer to neutral, because that does have an effect in addition to the anti-squat and anti-dive numbers for when it pulls the axle side to side, and also the angle it's operating at in effects to droop and up travel.
That makes sense, though.
Interesting.
Having it flatter allows it to work better. That makes sense.
So
Yeah, I mean, that's just because you have, as it goes through the travel, it's not changing. It's not moving on that radius at all.
Yeah.
Really, it's starting flat and it's only moving. I mean, you think of a stock vehicle that it's not moving up or down that much in normal driving situations, so you're never going to notice it.
This is true.
for on-road use, would you rather 3-link or a 4-link?
3-link.
3-link up front, 4-link in the rear with the track bar, because generally you're not running full hydro down the road. If you have a double triangulated setup, it is going to move on a separate axis to your drag link, which will create bump steer, because your axle is trying to do one thing and your drag link is not held in the same position.
Interesting.
So is it not a common practice to have a double triangulated 4-link with a steering box and drag link and everything?
I know a couple of people that have done that for off-road only vehicles, and their steering does a bunch of weird shit, so I would not want to run that down the road at all.
Interesting.
What I imagine would happen if you ran, I've never done it, I've never seen a rig with it, so this is all speculation, but I can tell you exactly how my steering box handles and how it would handle if everything didn't move like it was supposed to with the track bar. If it doesn't move, if the axle is properly double triangulated in the front, right, it's going to move pretty, it's not going to follow a curved swooping motion, right? When you flex your Jeep out or you drop the suspension all the way out, the axle shifts a couple inches one way. You're not going to have any of that if you have a double triangulated 4-link. It's just going to go straight down because there's nothing binding it, pulling it one way or the other way, except for the drag link. And if the drag link is the only thing that can keep things moving where it wants it to go, your steering wheel's going to move. So you're going to end up with this crazy bump steer effect, especially on big bumps, where your entire steering is just going to just get yanked. And it's not horrible.
It's not pleasant, though.
No, it's not pleasant. It's not really great for highway driving or driving in anywhere near one of those concrete walls where there's bumps and it's pulling you one way or the other and there's cars around you, right? It's not fun. I've done it. I've tweaked my steering on my Jeep to get rid of some bump steer, and I'm happy with it. I've got a tiny bit, but it's very manageable. I couldn't imagine not being able to control that, because if you don't have a track bar, you can't control how that axle's moving.
Mm-hmm.
So
the full hydro works pretty well because it sits on the axle and it keeps the tires located with the direction that the axle was moving under travel, which creates some entertaining things. Like, you can hit a bump with full hydro and it's very odd because you don't get the feedback in the steering wheel. It just goes down the road.
That's interesting. In like a major off-road application, if you were going through like a section of whoops with the full hydro setup at a 4-link, would that cause the caster to drastically change as it's rotating through this, like the full suspension?
So that's another interesting point to bring up. What causes caster and pinion angle changes, because they are the same thing, they just have different results, are the length of the upper and lower control arms in relation to each other. If they were the exact same length, your pinion and caster would not change. If the uppers are shorter, if I remember correctly, it rotates the pinion towards...
down. It'll rotate it down as it goes.
It'll rotate it down? I thought it rotated it up.
I'm just trying to... No, I thought that's why you... Oh, no, you're right. Yep.
It
disregard.
rotates it up, and then if it's longer, it rotates it, or it leaves it flat, depending on how much longer it is. If it's excessively longer, supposedly you run into issues, but I've got 33.5-inch long front lowers with a 40-inch upper, and I don't run into issues with the pinion binding the drive shaft.
Same. I know mine's pretty excessive as well. And
yours isn't as bad. Yours is like 3 inches, not like 7, if I remember right.
Shorter or longer?
I can look it up. My upper is, I think it's like 5 inches. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's almost 5 inches longer.
Mine's like 7.5, 8.
That's a
don't
lot.
fucking matter.
Hey, my girlfriend likes my 5 inches, okay? Don't be talking.
Your upper is 5 inches or more longer than your lowers?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
My
Mine's
rear uppers
maybe
are the
3.
same way. Well, they're not the same way as bad. I think that's the rear uppers are like 36 and the lowers are 30 or 37 and the lowers are 34. So they're a little bit different, but whatever. It rotates the pinion towards the body.
No, so
No,
you're
it
talking
doesn't.
about your rear forelink?
Both of them. They have almost identical link lengths and
Oh,
separation.
okay, yep. Yeah, you
Uh,
said
So to correct myself earlier, my lowers are 37, my uppers are 40. So 3 inches. Okay, I'm a little shorter than I thought I was.
3 inches is much.
Yeah,
Yes.
mine's excessive
That's more
up front.
Hmm.
I made the mistake of moving the mount towards the front side of the truss, and then in addition to that, I've just got like 7.5 inches of separation at both ends.
Mm-hmm.
So it's excessive.
That might be why your Jeep does weird stuff. I mean, not bad weird stuff, just like it behaves differently.
It definitely behaves differently, and I'm very happy with how it behaves. The only thing that I'm still trying to get a handle on 2 years later is the fact that it doesn't unload until it's like there's nothing under my front wheels anymore. There's no in between. It either feels perfectly loaded or it gets really light and sketchy when the nose
Yeah.
comes up.
I've been complaining about that, and I still don't understand what you mean. My Jeep just doesn't have that same feeling, so I don't know.
It's very weird. You'd have to ride with me for a couple obstacles to understand what I'm talking about. I have to call it out as it's happening for you to like fully get what I'm talking about.
Gotcha. Well, I'll look forward to that this summer.
But,
Or
okay.
this spring, hopefully. Jesus.
Yeah, hopefully spring.
Holy
Yeah.
crap.
I got a set of
Let me-
BFG stickies that need to get smoking, and they're already smoked, so they just need to be finished.
Hey, you can come over to my place, Luke, and do as much smoking as you want.
Which type? And as soon as the
Yes.
tires are all set, or not tires, wow. As soon as the Jeep is all set and the tires are on it, absolutely. I want to run that creek trail again.
The answer is yes. No, don't you dare fuck up my creek trail. I like it.
It needs to be more aggressive.
But like,
Huh?
I want to go up to the right and go through, instead of how everyone goes up near the tree, I want to go the other way. Up that rock set. Nah.
Ooh, that'd be entertaining.
Is the creek trail the one that's all the way to the left?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Closer to the house?
Yeah, it's the
That we've
closest
been
section to
digging
my
out.
house.
Yes.
Which I do have plans for a couple of things at a little bit more to the left.
Cool. Yeah, I think there's definitely some potential on that side.
So I know
Yeah.
that we just touched on a lot of like really far out there to the beginning, crowd, numbers and figures and everything. How about we tie it back into some of the more like bolt-on stuff and when you decide what you're going to build versus buy? Because I know
Yeah.
that
I was gonna bring us there.
I
Bolt
was
on suspension. Assuming we didn't lose everybody who doesn't have any idea what, or doesn't care for link suspension talk. Bolt on lift kits or pre-built stuff, and we were talking a little bit before. It seems like we see a lot of people who don't have the maybe. I don't want to say critical thinking skills because I'm sure there's some brain power in there. It's just not being used to determine whether one product is good or the other product is better. Right? Oh man, I'm butchering this. Help me out here. Help me out here.
Alrighty. So I think what you're talking about isn't so much a lack of brain power sometimes as it is a lack of understanding. For example, if you have something that's packaged really well, but, the suspension geometry is off on, you're probably going to get a bad opinion from people that like the way it looks, I'm not trying to name any names, but it starts with a C and it has an F in it. I really do not like their cross member because there is not nearly enough link separation on it.
Oh, I figured it out.
Yep.
I felt like the Da Vinci Code right there, figuring that one out.
I'm still trying to figure
Yeah,
it
I
out.
don't have it.
It's 6 letters, 3 in the start, 3 in the end, 2 separate words.
It starts with a C, the middle word's got an F in it. Or the end word's got an F in it. Cav.
Oh, you really stuck up there. Yes,
Look
see,
at
I
that.
don't care about a lot of the manufacturers and I don't
Yeah.
even look at CF because it's just the stuff they sell isn't.
It's not for our market, but it's very, very well polished, but it leaves a lot to be desired in the category of links. And part of the
Yep.
reason that I, wanted to pull us into this direction is I was thinking about that creek trail at Kish's. If your links hang low, you hit. It's just the way it is. Some of these bolt-on kits look really nice. Like, one of the biggest gripes you're going to hear from Graham and Cody is that their crossmember hangs low. It's a great suspension, but your crossmember hangs low. Someone that's looking
Oh, and
at...
it looks ugly as sin,
Mhm.
Yeah.
but it
Yeah.
works. Other than the fact that it doesn't work for a
So the
full
cool
size
part,
front axle, but that's
the only thing that I can't complain too much though is the meeting point of the lowers to the cross member is pretty smooth. So if you're gonna hit your cross member anyways, you're already dragging on your link. So it's really, I've never really noticed where I'm like super hung up on it, but I haven't really had to have backed out of
It doesn't
that
happen
obstacle.
often, but when it does, it gets you, and you have to somehow lift the body 2.5, 3 inches to get over this stupid thing. And at that point, you're just winching forward, and
True.
you're done. So it sucks.
All right. Keep going. Sorry to.
No problem. But on that particular obstacle we're talking about, part of the reason we're looking at building Kish a setup is we can build him a setup where it's only going to hang 2 inches down, except for right at the link mounts. And where those link mounts are, it's only going to hang an inch lower. Using some Barnes off-road stuff and some rough stuff Heims, and the cost factor is there. That's a big problem I see with a lot of the bolt-on stuff is the cost factor to me. It's
But
not
that's not
as
to say that all the bolt-on stuff is
Mhm.
bad. There are plenty of, like the Clayton crossmember, a lot of us have run it. We all really like that. The Iron Rock 3-link, I like the idea. I haven't seen anybody break it, but I'm not sure if that's because it's not being used rough.
Rudy Castiello broke it.
He did. Okay, I knew somebody
He
did.
blew the arms apart. Yep.
Yeah, I figured that would be the weak point, because aren't they bent?
They're bent, but he ripped out the weld joint at the end.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, however, I will say he's probably not
That's kind of
average
impressive.
usage. He's not average usage, though. I feel
No.
like he wheels like Colin. So, if you know Colin, you know he's dumb, and he breaks stuff, and it's always an entertaining time. But,
Now,
Yeah.
if you were to suggest a long arm suspension to somebody, would you try to stress the idea of getting a true 3-link and
That's
not?
That's not the point of this conversation. You should be able to determine whether you need the beefiest beef that looks ugly, or if you can handle going with something that's a little lighter duty, won't break under normal usage, but if you go, rock bouncing, the thing is going to break. That's sort of where I was imagining this conversation was going to go.
Mhm.
Yeah. I think we can come back and we can hit what Cody's point was, because that was a good point. And it does tie
Thank you.
into what you're saying.
Thank you, Luke. Graham. I'm just saying, like, to the average person, when they hear a long arm setup, they're thinking a radius arm. Because that's, to me, that's what I didn't realize, like, oh, it's just after a certain, like, X amount of inches, you can really start considering it a long arm. To me, when I saw long arm, it was always, like, radius arm. Which
Yeah.
most bolt-on kits are, because it really doesn't take that much, because you just have to get a cross member that bolts in, which is super fucking scary, and then a lot of them don't even suggest having a stiffeners. They're like, yeah, don't bother, just bolt it in here, 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 and here into your sheet metal and hope that it holds. That's the part that scares the shit out of me.
Well,
Oh,
I
they do
actually
3 bolts on each side. It's more than factory. The cross members are generally beefy. Even the shitty rough
How is
country.
that more than factory?
so on the
They
note
only
of the
have 2
rough
factory.
country, the rough country kit's actually not bad. It comes with some reinforcements that go into the unibody and that
Oh.
you bolt in there so it sandwiches it.
The one I'm working on doesn't have that. We need to
Oh
clean
boy.
it up. It's getting fully welded on before it leaves the shop, but then to take any transfer case transmission out, you have to cut it off. So
Oof. That's
it's not. I don't know. I'm just gonna I don't like it.
I had okay luck with mine, but mine came with the plates that went into the unibody that I had to drill a couple of holes through my stiffeners to get in, but they worked.
See, I know this kit's been on like 3 Jeeps, so I bet you those were lost on Jeep number 1.
Probably, and
Yep.
they're a pain in the ass to fish out.
Yep.
So what I was kind of alluding to is, for somebody who is looking to get a bolt-on kit but doesn't wheel extremely hard, would you stress to them to find a kit that comes with a 3-link setup or a radius arm setup? Because to me, a radius arm setup, because A, the thing where they mostly bolt on, not many companies stress the idea of welding them on, but like B, you have 2 points that are your major points. Your lowers are your main supports. If one of those breaks, you're fucked. You know what I mean?
See-
At least with like
Yeah, but if any of your 3-link mounts
but
break, then you're fucked as well.
the dispersion of force is my biggest concern. When you have 6 points holding your axle to your body, that's a lot more than 4.
Well, so on that note, though, you bring up an interesting point. If someone were to be like, hey, here's an IRO 3-link, or you could have a Clayton long arm, I'm going to take the Clayton long arm just for off-the-shelf components, even if it is a radius arm compared to the IRO 3-link, because I know how abusive I am. But for your average user, honestly, I'm going to say no. It probably doesn't matter that much.
Good to know.
Like, if you seriously think about it, your average person on 33s is not going to be caring that much about the performance that their suspension is going to give them when they're in a rock garden. They're going to care more about the feel on the way to work.
True.
And you can get the
Yeah.
same exact feel out of a radius arm on the road
Yep.
as you can a 3-link.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a very fair point, honestly.
I agree, but I was going to say something different. If you're going to go and change up the suspension, whether it be a bolt-on kit or not, then you should be doing your research and not be just pulling the first thing that
Yeah,
pops
I
off.
don't disagree with that. And if I'm being honest, I'm trying to steer Kish the same way I steered Cody, just maybe a little bit different because of different reasonings behind what's being done and the time frame on everything. But you should definitely think about what you're going to do. And I like building my stuff. Maybe I'll use a Clayton cross member. Maybe I'll build a cross member. It depends on my time frame. But I like knowing exactly what I am building and what is going to come out of my shop. I care about that more than I care about it being brand name. But I can understand buying a good brand name like Clayton. Honestly, the Cab Fab kit's not bad at all. It's pretty fucking beefy. I just
It
don't
used to
like
be
their...
Their old one was sketchy. They had one a couple years ago.
Did
I don't
they?
even
Huh.
maybe some other kit, but it was like a piece of 2x4 with some brackets welded onto it. It was, or not brackets, but like tabs for links.
Oh,
Maybe
that's
that was
horrifying.
Cab Fab, and if it wasn't, I apologize to Cab Fab, but I swear there was some sketchy ass link pictures going around, and I'm pretty sure a company was selling them.
Oh, and whatever you do, avoid Rock Slayer. Sorry. Had to be thrown out there because of the latest Facebook drama that's been hilarious.
I mean, if they just
Did you
Hear
ever
me
watch
out.
the video?
hear me out, buy their kit, unfuck it, and install it. Right? I wonder if you could.
that's a lot of unfucking.
I might as well start with nothing. And it's just
Yeah,
unfuck
but if it's the
myself.
full builder kit, you're gonna get the. It's gonna be like all weld on shit. You weld on your frame, right? You just tell them you're getting it for a TJ, and you just weld the brackets on where you want them, not where they tell you to put them. I wonder if they even come with instructions. Someone
So-
buy us a Rockslayer kit so we can install it on a vehicle. Please.
So on that note, I was actually looking at a couple of people that have done some Cherokee stuff, and my interest has been piqued. I've seen a couple of 4-links similar to what Miguel's buggy has that have been being built recently. Those are fucking cool. What they're doing is they're mounting their upper suspension mounts off of the slider mounts, and they're tying the slider mounts in more heavily to get a double triangulated front
Yes, I have
4-link.
seen those. I've seen
That's
a couple of those.
cool
actually.
as fuck.
And it's almost a mid arm. It doesn't go back as far.
No, it doesn't go back as far, but hey, if you're
Oh, yeah,
trying to
because
get
there's stretching in the front,
75% of the lengths on the front,
Yep.
it
Wouldn't
seems
that
like a solid idea.
Wouldn't that cause weird suspension rotation though? Because
No,
Not if they're both the
because
same spot on each side.
yeah, if they're on the same spot on each side, and if they meet at the same distance from the ball joint on each side, as long as they've got clearance, they will perform the upper function, and then if you need more triangulation, you can build that into your lower links.
no, I see what you mean, but I feel like that would definitely cause
Nope.
the axle to swing. Okay, but I mean, if
Nope.
you think about it, if you have two pieces, okay, I'm wrong then. Whatever.
no.
Just fucking keep
No.
saying no. That's cool, dude. Fuck, don't let me explain it. I'll shut up. That's fine.
Explain your thinking.
No, I'm fine. That's fine.
Nope, come on.
No, I'm fine. It's geometry.
All right, we'll
I
come
just-
back to you. We'll come back to you. So, where are the lowers on those mounted?
On those, they're mounting the lowers off of a cross member. So
In the middle? And they're
closer to the
joined
middle, and they're the tighter part of the triangle. So the upper part is the less wide version of the triangle. There's more spacing at the upper links generally. Similar to
Yep.
how my rear is set up, where I've got a decent amount of spacing on my lower links, even though it is a dual triangulated setup, because they come to they come to form a triangulated point, if you will. It's not as much angle as if they met in the center, as compared to my uppers. That locates the axle still, though. Even if you're using the lowers meeting at the center, it's the same principle, just flipped over on itself.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, I do like the suspension setup on Miguel's buggy. I've been looking at that. I saw that like 3 years ago for the first time. I remember he was explaining how the triple stick worked to one of my buddies, and it was an impressive rig. Stuff like stiffeners. I feel like maybe I don't see them as much as I used to, but everybody always, at least around in the club and maybe in a couple of the XJ groups, you see people asking what stiffeners they should get. And
The ones that weld on.
I know, but there's like
There's the answer.
there's certain kits that are more worthwhile than others, but then if you're thinking about from a budget standpoint as well, there are other good kits. I know what I used is different than what Luke's got on his Jeep, and I'm pretty sure you guys all have stuff that Luke has on his Jeep because it's stiffener is a stiffener. But there are also some really nice kits that if you weld them on correctly and not poorly, you can. They're really nice, like the Hooligans, and I think the King stiffeners are like an up and coming one. Everybody likes them.
My
haven't really
mids are
put much into it.
completely different from everyone else.
and your fronts.
And my fronts?
And your fronts. I have DBM on everything. I like them because they come with decently sized weld holes. They're cheap. They fit good. They're okay.
Yeah, I have no complaints with mine. But I mean, honestly, other than me being a shit welder, that's about it. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of hole, it's really nice because like the thickness of it really complements the unibody, where it's not too thick that you're just sitting there like blowing holes in it the whole entire time, and there's enough holes that if you fuck up on one, there's 1-2 inches away, so you know that that section is still solid. And the fitment was really nice. So
Yeah, I've used the HD Off-Road and the DBMs. I've helped with installing the JCRs, and I forget what else. But
How are the JCR ones? I've never used those, or never even seen anybody with those.
I think Kish has them.
Oh,
No.
then maybe I have.
What are
seen
yours?
it.
I have the dirt bound front and the iron rock
Yep.
mid.
Oh, never mind. I stand corrected.
So the only thing that weirds me out about Kish's is that the top where you weld it to is the floor, not the unibody. It's the only thing that's kind of an interesting big difference that I feel is that still like as structural, I guess.
Well, part of the reason that we went with those, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think when we were talking about it, it was because we had to redo your floors, so we were going to do the top seam to the unibody when we were doing the floors.
Yeah, so something like that. It was to help better tie in the new floors once I got my new floors. That's why I went with those, because they have a wicked lip. I think it comes up like, I don't know, 1.5 to 2 inches onto the floor.
The mid stiffener?
Yeah, the mids.
And this, you did Iros?
Yeah.
Iron rock, yeah.
Okay. Because I have the HD, no, I've got the rough stuff midsection, and they have got, it's probably like 1 inch worth of lip, and I couldn't weld it to anything. That's all. I mean, I could have if I ground it down, but my floors are rotted out, so it was just going to burn right through, so I didn't weld it. That's going to be fixed when I cut my floors out, because I'll be going through all that, but
Poor
Graham,
SOB.
that was like the same mindset that I had. But my lip is easily double the size of yours.
yeah, interesting. I didn't realize Iro had that much of a lip on the bottom. It definitely.
Oh yeah.
I feel like that's not as strong though. To be quite
It
fair.
can be a good thing though. I don't know.
So-
it really depends on the plans, I guess.
So, Kish, correct me if I'm wrong, but we were talking about this, and we were talking about taking like one of those center drills and popping holes through the floor to rosette weld the floor to the stiffeners, then weld the floor into the outer panels of the unibody for where your rock sliders mount up, to tie the floor into the rock slider when we redid all of that with like 120 wall thick sheet metal.
Yeah, it was something like that. We were going to we had this crazy plan to like wickedly tie everything together in itself.
Yeah, I think we were going to use 1/8 sheet metal and do that on the intersection of the frame rail to the where the rock slider mounts, so that way it would be like 1/8 of an inch direct tie-in into the slider.
Yeah,
For where the feet,
something
or
like that.
like from the pedal area back behind the driver's seat.
Yeah.
And then just pop holes down the rest of the way and rosette weld that when we put the rest of the sheet metal back in.
Yeah.
I can't remember
Yeah.
why we thought it was a good idea, but it still sounds entertaining.
It's way easier.
I honestly don't remember why we came up with that whole crazy plan, but we did, so I'm going to stick
Because we
with
were
it.
doing it right after Graham took the rock through his floor at Badlands.
No.
No?
Yeah, I still have to
No,
fix that.
we had this plan when I ordered the mid stiffeners over 1.5 years ago.
Huh.
When did Graham take a rock to the floor?
Well,
Badlands.
it was a really pointy rock. Nobody was there except for me and Colin, and Richie, I think, was guiding us through.
Oh,
Yes,
And,
yes,
There was
I
this
was.
really pointy rock, and it got caught in between two of my what the hell do you call those things?
Slider supports.
Yeah, the slider supports in between my rocker. Essentially, it jammed it right in there, and it was really pointy, like, pinhead, and it just shot right through my floor next to me on the seat. I didn't notice it at the time because there was a lot of other stuff going on, but when I got back to camp and I realized that the floor section that was just, I didn't even weld it because, again, the metal in there is all junk. It's all covered in like tinfoil and other factory bullshit, and it's basically not like, there's the amount of metal that's left isn't worth welding to, so I just RTV'd it. It's like, no, a rock's not going to get in there, right? Well, a rock did get in there, and it just pulled that whole section of floor up, so it basically inverted itself. So I've hammered it down since, but it still is like a massive gap, right? It doesn't sit right. That will be another thing that I fix when I take the floor out, because it needs an entire redesign. But I can see how having a longer lip to keep the pinhead rocks out of your floor, if that's how your floor is set up, would make sense.
Yeah. I am really looking forward to having us back on that trail too, Graham.
Yeah, I'm excited to get everybody on it, because I think it was a fun trail. Once we, it would have been funner if we weren't like just trying to explore, right? We were about to go to the creek.
You were the very first set of tires on that trail too.
I know.
You got to keep that in mind. You were first, Colin was second. First rubber ever on that trail.
Yep.
So you had to fight through all the moss and everything. You had to figure out where
we didn't
the
do too bad
were.
considering we were at a rush.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is that trail was cut with traps in New England.
Yes.
Fair.
Yeah.
Curious. Not the
Traps
Chad
and really
Crawler
sweaty
Master
Richie.
Race. Well, that's normal. Seriously, if the temperature gets over 60 degrees and you're in a fucking t-shirt. Or a fucking, not t-shirt, tank top.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah, you're not wrong on that one.
Hey, I'm just happy that it wasn't as hot this past year as it was the year before that. It was disgusting in 2019. So bad.
I can't wait for this year's trip because seriously, I think we've hit that we've hit on that trail almost every or that entire trip almost every episode. It was great.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites. Hopefully, Roush Creek this year will give me the same experience and we can shoot the shit about that one for a whole year.
Yeah.
Roush this year is going to be wild.
Yeah, it sucks that only a couple of us went past year, and that keeps saying it, but I'll say it again. Trip was just absolutely incredible.
Hey, it's called
Wheeling is
building
so
tradition.
Yeah, I know. The wheeling is like, you picture every single park that you have in Massachusetts and Connecticut and smash them all together, but space out the hard stuff, and you have Roush Creek, and it's very refreshingly
It's
different.
fucking insane. And I think on that note, any final thoughts, or you guys want to cut it here?
I'm cool with that.
Just my final thought is just that Badlands is probably my one big trip that I'm planning on this year.
Cool.
All right, guys. Well, keep a couple spare angle grinder discs around, sweep your shop floor, and we're going to cut it here.